It takes a madman to trade his riches to feast with the devil. This is Rebooty and the Beast, a podcast in two parts. I'm N. Burke.
And I'm Matt Molinaro, and in the first episodes, we'll review an original piece of media, and in the subsequent episodes, this is episode 3 of our 4-part series, we discuss the reboots.
Yes, and so this is the third in the series of Nosferatu reboots, or second in the reboot series. It's the second reboot. It's the third in our series. I don't know why I made that so yeah. I made that much harder than it needed to be. This movie, okay, so it came out in 2023.
Yes, this is Nosferatu, also known as Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, 2023, not to be confused with the Nosferatu that came out just recently.
Not the Robert Eggers Nosferatu.
No.
This actually, so I was fascinated by this movie as I was watching it, and then afterwards I read everything I could read about it. I watched every YouTube video I could find about it. I looked on the Kickstarter page because this was independently funded by Kickstarter. Because I was just so perplexed by so many things in this movie. I had to know everything I could find out about it. And apparently this movie was funded more than 10 years ago, and it took them over 10 years to get it into people's hands. And so all the people who had funded it on Kickstarter were I guess we're never getting this thing that we funded, even though we reached our funding goal and supposedly it's done, and they stopped providing updates on it. So everybody kind of thought it was just going to be lost in the ethers. And then finally it appeared almost 10 years later. So that's kind of why it coincides so closely with the 2023 one, but it was actually done more than 10 years ago.
Okay, that makes sense. A lot of that makes sense. I didn't look up too much about this afterwards, other than it was funded on Kickstarter.
Yes.
So I'm really curious to hear more about it.
Okay. Well, so as we said, it's an independent film. It's director is a man named David Lee Fisher, who, if you go on IMDb, I could only find one other film he had made, and it seems to also have been kind of the brainchild of him and the man who plays Count Orlok in this film, who's an actor named Doug Jones, who I guarantee you recognize. He was the main gentleman in the silent episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I looked him up afterwards, these actors, and I was like, oh my gosh, I recognize him for a few things.
Yeah, he was the hands in the eyeballs guy in Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes.
He was in The Shape of Water. He's kind of he's a very, very tall, very thin man, and so I think he kind of gets a lot of sort of spooky character actor roles. And so I think that this kind of emerged as a brainchild of the two of them. I get the impression from the videos that this was an idea that they had kind of come up with together to make this film and to fund it through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes friends have an idea and they do it.
And they do it. So I mean, okay. So the film is intended, maybe it would be good to discuss this first. So this is on the kind of the Kickstarter page. I'll just read this little description of what they intended the film to be. So they wanted to produce a feature-length faithful homage to the classic masterpiece of Nosferatu through a use of updated story structure, plot pacing, visual effects, and sound and music. And it says, we believe this fresh take on an old tale will bring something new to devoted fans and excite an entire generation of audiences as well. By scanning a vintage print of the original film, we were able to shoot our actors on green screen, then layer them into digital sets recreated from the original film's imagery. The illusion was that modern-day actors were seamlessly performing within the world of the 1920s film, now with music, sound, and dialogue. We coined this technique a visual remix. Nosferatu's production will use some of the same revolutionary process, but to a much higher degree of quality due to great advances in software, cameras, and computer power, allowing for us higher cinematic quality and for more dynamic sets and locations. So that's kind of the idea of it being like they use the phrase remix a lot to refer to this movie, which is such an interesting idea that I've never heard anyone talk about for film. Because it's, I don't know if this was your experience, but like the minute the film started, I was like, this looks like a model town. What am I looking at? There was a lot of like, what am I looking at? Did you get that? Was that your feeling?
Yes, I was often like, oh, okay, it's really stylized. It's really stylized.
Very stylized.
And I was often like, okay, I think I like this here, but then I absolutely hated it a lot of the time.
Okay.
Like, sometimes it was like, oh, that looks cool that way.
Yes.
And most other times it was like, what's going on? Sometimes it looked almost comic booky.
Yes.
Sometimes it looked animated.
Yes.
Sometimes it looked AI.
Yep.
And sometimes it looked like it was just kind of filmed in my backyard. So it had a strange
it had a
mix.
really like it's I'm just fascinated by it. It was so interesting to watch it visually. Independent of like plot and all of that, like just looking at the film, the look of the film is unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like Sin City, but not at all with the budget to do it. Like,
yeah,
you know that sort of have you seen Sin City?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's filmed very like comic booky, high contrast, sort of black and white with punchy colors, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's very gritty, dark. It's like that kind of quality, like that sort of high contrasty, take you out of reality but not totally sort of animated.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not done with finesse, let's say.
Okay.
And I don't think that, in my opinion, most of the time it's a successful technique.
Okay.
And I find it surprising that in your description you read that something that was meant to be a standout of this type of remix, this type of medium, was going to be the connection to music and sound in some way.
Oh.
I find that shocking.
Well, I mean, I think that their idea was, they would be able to, because it really, I mean, one of the things they talk about in like websites and things like that is how they really wanted this to be pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the original Nosferatu. And it kind of is. It
kind of is. They add a lot of for it being a shot-for-shot remake, they add a lot of strange things in, I feel like.
I agree.
But other times, I'm glad you said that. There were times, particularly randomly, the scene on the staircase where he's leaving and saying goodbye to his wife, and you know what I'm talking about?
Totally, yeah.
We'll talk about that scene because there's quite a strange goodbye, but it felt like, oh, this looks exactly like the scene.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of it. Yeah.
Why? But yeah, it's. Do you want the summary from IMDb?
Sure, please.
Okay. Vampire Count Orlok expresses interest in a new residence and real estate agent Hutter's wife.
Okay, so pretty much the same description that we've had before, I feel like.
Yeah. We've gone back to the original names. Count Orlok, Ellen, Thomas, the Hutters.
Yes.
There's like this is German, I think, in many ways, like. So there's like high, what did I say, like
Donka. Oh no, Donka is thank you.
They say that too a few times though, but like what's his name?
Hair knock.
Ernock, yeah. I kept calling him Renfield throughout my notes because that's easier for me than Knock.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I realized halfway through, I'm like, oh, I'm writing Renfield and they're calling him Hair Knock. Everyone else, I got the names right.
Yeah. Okay, so again, intended to be a shot-for-shot remake of the 22 Nosferatu with some notable diversions. So we open with Jonathan and Ellen, and he's shaving, and he's like, "Do you hear the bell of this glorious sunrise, my dear?" Which, again, was not dialogue in the original film. So they added a good amount of dialogue. My first note is that he is extremely cute. I think he's very, very
Oh,
cute.
he is. I'll say that for him. He's very cute.
He's very cute. I don't know that acting in this movie was his strong suit.
Oh, I know it wasn't. I do know that it was not. And I think everybody on the set, well, I think everybody who's watching it knows. I don't know if everyone on set knows it because I don't think they know it about themselves either. I don't think our acting was paramount to this production.
Yeah, there were some people who were definitely better than others, of course, but
they stood out. I have a hard time saying they were good or bad because the bar from the main two is set in a strange place.
Yeah.
Because let's talk about the main two characters since we're opening up. Because it's just going to continue this way throughout the film for me. We get this, like, you know, she's pissed about the flowers because, you know, they're dead. Like every other version, we get that. And then we get this, like, strange way they deliver lines to each other. Yeah. It's almost like a high school production.
Yeah, it's very theatrical again. And I would be interested in knowing, because that could have been an intentional choice, because remember how we talked about how the original, like, was very over the top everything? Yes. And I mean, that could have been a choice they made to kind of like keep that theater vibe to it. I don't know if that was actually the case though. It could, because it could have been that, or it could have just been some like kind of not amazing acting.
Yeah, it was strange. Like, yes, they had that theatrical quality, the way they acted the whole time, many of them.
Yeah, the way their lines were delivered felt very much like, I'm on a stage.
Yes, it felt, but not even like modern, like Broadway, like Shakespeare in the 1800s or something, like, or whenever, you know, Shakespeare was performed originally. You know what I mean? It felt like very stagey. I'm reading off a cue card or something. It was weird.
Yeah.
And then the way they interacted with each other was so strange because Thomas Hutter, that actor who we just said was cute, is so over the top.
Yes.
The whole movie. It almost sounds like he's whining or shouting the whole movie. Whereas Ellen cannot decide what she's gonna do with this character. Yeah. She is sometimes also doing this weird theatrical and by the way, the accents through this movie
we have to talk about that. We have to talk about that.
She's the worst, I think, at it because, well, she's the most glaringly obvious at it because she oscillates between like this Shakespearean theatrical old English accent type thing. Yeah. And like Emma Roberts in American Horror Story.
So it's so interesting because this was almost entirely filmed and produced in the United States. Almost exclusively American actors, and yet sometimes it was set in Germany because they kept it in Wisborg or Viborg or whatever we decided it was pronounced. Not a German accent to be found for the most part. Occasionally a weird like Eastern European, Russian adjacent accent was found. But for the most part, you had people like straight up like Californians saying "Danke" and then being like, "Oh, pretty flowers." And it was very, very alarming and jarring, the accent work in this movie.
It was bizarre. Like, make a decision. Just stick with it.
Make a decision, honestly.
And the music from the beginning.
Don't shit on the music. I really liked the music.
I'm going to shit on the music, and the intense violin playing was so strangely upbeat, I felt, for the tone of this movie. At so many times, it felt like I was just listening to when you used to watch the Weather Channel. It just felt like random sounds. So many times, random ass classical music that was way too springy.
Yeah, I think I'm mainly interested in the music when Ellen starts to experience her dreamlike kind of experiences with Orlok. Then I thought the music was successful, but the rest of the time I don't know.
So that's my notes just to say tone and how I'm sort of feeling throughout the movie. And it starts right in this very first scene. I was like, what is really going to be, what am I watching?
What am I watching?
And their relationship is very different in this. Like, he's like annoyed by her, it feels like.
Okay, let's talk. So two things. One, listeners, when I was watching this, I sent an all capitals text message to Matt saying, Matt, what am I watching?
I died.
The second thing is the relationship between Hutter and his wife Ellen is I'm always looking for gay subtext. And so they've been married for a year, and she has a line that's like, maybe we can finally like be together. Perhaps we can at last be together. And I was like, oh, they've never had sex. And then I was like, oh my God, please tell me that he's gay in this movie. And at least, Matt, I did find out that the actor who plays Hutter is gay in real life. So I was like, okay, the gay vibes that I was getting at first felt accurate.
Oh yeah, I got major gay, like, I just felt like he was gay.
I
this
agree.
Character, and I just thought, oh, it must be a gay actor playing this character.
Yeah.
But and just not caring that he's married to a woman in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, there is a lot of gay subtext in this film, so
agreed.
There is some, so
yes. So, you know, kind of the standard, he goes to work, Renfield.
Wait.
Oh,
Are we not going to talk about the CGI ant bug?
The spider.
There's like we're watching this movie where we're doing this like this remix, okay? And you can't really quite place where you are with the accents or the imagery or any of it or the music. And then randomly, she's got a CGI like Aeon Flux spider crawling on her hand, yes. Shiny as hell, like I'm watching Black Mirror. And they keep going back to it. It looks terrible. Why? This was not in the original.
I don't know.
And there's a lot of effing CGI bugs.
Yes, there is.
Then we can move on.
Okay. So he goes to work. Hernock gets a letter from Nosferatu, or, you know, Count Orlok. And I think it's back to the kind of like Enochian script that we talked about in the first movie. Yes. And interestingly, so part of I don't remember from the book exactly how Dracula and Renfield's connection begins, but this movie sort of implies that it kind of like possesses him a bit, because once he gets the letter, he starts sort of like things are glowing and the letter is very charmed. And I'm wondering if they meant to like imply kind of like a mind control thing.
Yeah, that's what I think they were doing, which I like that aspect of it because it gives a little bit more context to why he's so
loony, why he is the way he is.
Yeah, I did like that aspect of it, and I think that the graphics of how they had it glowing under his hands, this like angel language glowing as he moved his hands over it, while it kind of was cool at first, I was like, oh, this is so charmed. So charmed.
I agree.
Beyond. And then I also thought at first that this actor was doing a better job.
At first.
I was like, okay, this is... Well, remember the last Renfield?
Oh, God, yes.
So I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere better, but I'll let you continue there.
Do you remember 30 Rock?
Yeah.
The guy who plays like kind of the stage production guy who's Liz Lemon's friend in 30 Rock, it's like if you made that character play Renfield.
Oh my God. I was thinking of the guy in oh gosh, he used to act in a million things. Princess Bride. Have you seen that?
Well, oh my God, have I seen The Princess Bride a million times? Come on. Are you talking about the the short guy whose name I can't remember?
Yes. Wallace Shawn is the actor's
Wallace
name.
Shawn. Yeah. Okay.
Like his character in The Princess Bride.
Okay, we're getting there.
I could see
somewhere
that.
between Scott Adsit from 30 Rock's character and Wallace Shawn, you'll find the Renfield in this movie. He was less irritating to me than the 1979 Renfield, but only marginally. I do have to say, he like gets this letter, he becomes possessed, he starts rubbing it all over his face, and he's like clutching the letters to his face when Jonathan walks in, and Jonathan does not seem at all disturbed that his boss is rubbing papers on his face.
No, but I mean, hey.
Okay, we get we've got a new client, several travel days away. There may be some sweat, even a little blood lines.
At
And he
least
tells...
in this one, Jonathan is like, or whatever his name is. Is it Jonathan in this? Thomas, sorry.
Oh, Thomas, sorry, yeah.
No, I interchangeable. Thomas is like, this doesn't sound great. Like,
right.
He doesn't seem to want to go, unlike in the other ones where they're like, you're going to go away for a few days and just right now. And they're just like, okay.
Right, yeah, he's definitely resistant in this one. And he tells him he's leaving tonight at midnight. He's taking the train, which I think this is the first one where there was a train, because he was on horseback in both the other ones.
Yeah, horseback or by foot for a lot of it.
Which they must just not have had the budget to do horseback riding scenes.
Yeah, I mean, this movie was 30 minutes shorter than the other ones, which cut out all of the travel, but it somehow felt just as long. And I wrote down here, this is when the graphics start to get very Windows 98 screensavers and like all the video games I used to... It often felt like a PC video game.
Yeah.
From the late 90s.
Are you talking about the train specifically?
Before the train, like when he's in the place with Renfield or whatever his name is, and he's getting his job, and he's protesting and stuff. Like the set looked like literally I was watching a screensaver. And then when he goes like on the train itself was alright, I guess, but it was very shiny in comparison. Like some things were really modern in the movie, and some things weren't.
Yeah,
like a modern broom, a modern looking train. There was a lot of weird things.
Yes. But first, I want to go back. Before he leaves on the train, he entrusts Ellen, his wife, to Wolfram, who is the ship owner. And in this one, for some reason, they decided to not make him married to his wife. And they've redid the character as his sister, which was like, why did we... If this is supposed to be a shot-for-shot faithful adaptation, why did we just... make an arbitrary change to it's his sister and not his wife? I don't understand that.
Well, I think we get the answer a little later.
We do. But her name is Ruth, and she like sees beyond the mundane and has a crystal ball and seems like a little bit otherworldly, and it's interesting.
She is like the character in a lot of TV shows that's like the brassy bartender.
She is kind of,
of this world, you know?
Yeah.
She's the one who's a little bit more like hip and with it and, you know, has a clue what's going on.
She's worldly. She's the worldly woman.
She has a mystery in her eye.
Yeah.
And she, there's a lot of, okay, two things. All of the actors in this movie do a lot of arm work. A lot of their arms are doing the acting for them. Flailing. It's a lot of arm work. They could literally join a drill team. And the other thing is, the house that they're going to have Count Orlok move into, that they show in this movie, it's like, it's always a random, like, kind of like in disrepair house in the other ones I've seen.
Yes.
This one is like a crumbling fortress. It looks like where Bowser lives.
Yeah, it does. It's like a crumbling castle. And it's funny. There were times, you know, we've talked about how they're using some of the original footage from the 1920s film. I would almost need to go back and rewatch it because that is not what I remember it looking like. So that seems like a choice they made for this one.
It was a strange, like, apartment-looking building in the first one.
Okay.
Like, wedged in. It just looked like through the window.
Okay, all right.
Anyway.
Okay, so Thomas is preparing to leave.
Okay.
And Ellen is like, don't leave, stay with me. And she's horny. She wants to have sex. And he's like, I don't have time for this. I have to go.
Yeah, rolling his eyes. There's no connection.
None. You really get the impression that he is not interested in his wife at all, which is, again, a complete change from every other previous movie and the novel.
And the melancholy that we're supposed to be feeling from Ellen,
not present, completely absent
from the whole movie. She kind of looks like she's longing a lot, or like kind of like looking at something with a little bit of interest.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, I feel like the French woman from the 1979 one most accurately captured that character of like being moody and distant and kind of withdrawn and troubled and
mysterious and dark.
Yeah, this actress did not pull that off.
No.
She gives him a rock carved with a rune and tells him that he must keep it with him always. And she says, "I love you." And he says, "Yes, well, goodbye, darling." And
Yes!
my note was, "Ellen, you married a homo. He is gay. He is gay."
That's the quote I wrote down. She says, "I love you," and he says, "Yes, well, goodbye." Goodbye. Yeah.
Okay.
She gives him a stupid rock, and he basically says it's stupid.
Yes.
Like, she's like, "Here's this rock with a drawing on it that I've never, where we've been married. You don't even know I have rocks with drawings on them. Here's a rock with a drawing on it. It's not a thing we do, but here it is." And he's like, "This is pathetic."
Yeah.
He's so nasty.
Okay. We are
Also,
about to get... Okay, go ahead.
One thing they keep doing from this point on, howling sounds in the background.
Yes.
Sporadically, without reason, unexplained. There's no werewolf. We don't mention a werewolf in this one. There's just constantly, from this point on, howling sounds randomly happening in the background.
Yeah.
Like someone has a ringtone of a wolf on set.
Okay, we have to talk about what is now my favorite scene in the movie. One of my favorite scenes in the movie. So he like leaves on the train. He's on the midnight train to Georgia. She goes to sleep, and we get a perfume ad. She like is laying in bed, and like silk sheets are all around her, and there's like wafting windows, and everything gets kind of this like dreamlike quality. And she's pregnant for some reason, which is never really explained. But she's like walking around in her perfume ad, and then like opens the door and walks into Mordor. Because I think this is the first time we see any color in the film, but they kind of like tint the black and white to kind of like blood red. And I think it's meant to be like Dracula's castle. And then she literally comes herself awake.
I can't breathe. And this scene of the movie, I was like, okay.
You could have just, at any point in the scene, you could have just had a speaker say, "J'adore the new fragrance by Armani." Well, something like that.
I totally get your reference. What I was getting the whole time from this was like...
Total Eclipse of the Heart?
And yes, Total Eclipse of the Heart. I was just going to say, if I muted this and put Total Eclipse of the Heart on, or any song by the band Heart, it would have been perfect. I can't imagine it wouldn't have been perfect.
Yeah.
I wrote, she falls asleep and wakes up with like sexy high body count hair.
Very high body count hair.
A modern Victoria's Secret negligee. Pregnant again, stroking her pregnant belly. Like, it's very like the ads you would see at like 2 a.m. in the 90s where they'd be like, "Pick up the phone."
Yes.
It was that. And then I wrote, then she goes outside to a pink tinted Mortal Kombat scene.
Yes.
Where she's literally like Melina, shadowed, looking out into like a pink tinted hellscape. Yeah. Or it kind of looked like the memes that like the gothy girl in high school would put up.
Oh God.
That said like, "Don't come for me. You say bitch like it's a bad thing."
I will say, as like perfume-addy as this was, I think it's, of the ones we've seen so far, the one that kind of does the best job at trying to explain what Ellen is experiencing. Because in the other movies, it's just like she's asleep.
Yes.
But this is the first time where you kind of see her like traveling into this nightmare experience that she's been having. And so I liked that they added that, even if it was kind of like a perfume ad.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of it. And I liked it because it happened and I enjoyed watching it and reacting to it a lot. Yeah. A lot. But I don't think they were successful in telling me what was going on in her brain. Yeah. And explaining to me what was happening when she's teetering on the edge.
Yeah. And then we get to, what's his name? Thomas
Jonathan takes the train, or gets off the train and meets an interesting character.
A man with no eyes who he approaches and says, "Hey, you, what's wrong with your eyes?" I was
Another quote
dead.
I wrote down.
I was dead. I almost opened with that quote, but it was just like, he sees this man who clearly has no eyes and says, "Hey, you, what's wrong with your eyes?"
It was so weird. This is a new character.
It is a new character, right? Because he was definitely not in either of the previous movies.
Not at all. And the prosthetic or whatever you want to call what's on his head.
Bad.
It is maybe the worst mask. I'm not going to call it a prosthetic. It's a Halloween mask. It is the worst mask I have ever seen in a film. Maybe not in a film. It's really bad. It's really bad. It looks like
not good at all.
A project.
Yeah.
And why? And they kept him on screen for so long.
Well, that, and then he comes back. But he's there to basically... So here's my theory, okay? This was a very low budget production, and I think that they couldn't do the scene where they had an inn full of people being like horrified, like, don't go to Count Dracula's castle, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the crowd of Romani warning him away from going to Dracula's castle. So I think this was their substitute for it, to be like, because he says, once I see evil in mountain, now no more eyes. So I guess he saw Dracula's castle and lost his eyesight or lost his eyes or something like that.
Maybe he's supposed to be a tale of what could happen to you if you go up there and survive.
That's kind of what I think. So
okay, well,
I this was one of the choices where I was like, not a great choice.
No, because they still have. So he goes and has this crazy interaction where he harasses a man on the street, and then he goes inside the inn and is greeted by. Davey said, "Is that George Lucas?" I was like, "Is that Orville Redenbacher?" And then I thought, have you ever seen Tangled?
Yes, but it's been a while.
Okay, there's a queer-coded innkeeper in Tangled that they come upon who has sort of like a Nordic accent.
Are you talking about the one in Frozen?
Oh, that's Frozen! Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Tangled because I love Tangled. Okay, Frozen, yeah, that one. He kind of gave me that guy vibes.
A little bit.
Like,
again,
he felt like a character that was a little queer-coded.
It was a vaguely Eastern European accent by way of, I listened to a couple YouTube videos of how to do a Russian accent. Mm-hmm. And he says, you know, like, don't go to Count Orlok's castle. The death bird, it stalks the forest at night. There's a very weird dynamic where John Thomas is like horny for the barmaid, and she's like horny for him. And listen, we're gonna get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But one of my biggest pet peeves is when a character in a movie or a TV show is handed a cup, like for a beverage, that cup is empty because she hands him an empty cup. And you can always tell, and it is infuriating to me. Like, just put something in the cup. I don't care. Anyway.
Yeah. He's not as rude as a
no
in the other ones. He's still rude, but he's been rude the whole movie. So it doesn't feel like as jarring in the other ones when he's rude to the staff.
Yeah.
About getting food. And the flirting with the waitress thing. It was very strange. Yes, he's doing this weird put on flirting with the waitress, and I was thinking this is not the vibe what he's looking for either.
No.
Her acting. Okay, she looked like she was not in this world at all.
No.
She looked like she was in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Correct.
Or like just working at a pirate-themed restaurant in today's time.
Yes.
And her acting, did they just sedate her beforehand? Or give her like some strange pain medication mix that she wasn't used to? And she started to like wander around the set?
I think the direction was give him sexy eyes, and she delivered I've taken a sedative eyes.
Yeah. And then he sleeps with her.
Yeah.
And we don't even get to see it.
No, I know. She gets up and leaves. He hears the call of the death bird and like looks out the window. The blind man is saying, "It is here, it is here." And he's rude to him. He's like shrieking.
Shrieking at like a howler monkey, as he would say.
And he's like, "Shush, I'm going to sleep." And like closes the window on him. And then we see him maybe get killed while there's like a shadow of bat wings that like are around him. That was
shadow of weird translucenty bat wings.
Yeah, not good.
Big, like on a person, not like a bat, like massive.
Yeah,
that's new.
Okay, then we cut back to Ellen and Ruth.
Okay,
and Ellen and Ruth talk about love. And Ruth says there's many kinds of love. And she's like, selfless love, blah, 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 love. Even the kind of love that is forbidden by society. And she is caressing Ellen's hand. And I was like, oh my God, lesbians. We're about to get lesbian love in this movie. But we don't. It
was like, as the scene started and they were talking, I was like, I was joking around. And I was like, is Ruth coming on to her?
I know.
And then she kept talking about the types of love. And I was like, oh my God, she really seems like she's coming on to her. And then when she caressed her face and like neck and had those eyes looking down at her, and the actress playing Ellen tried to do like a longing look back. She did her best. And I was like, oh my God, this is a real, very not coded. It was very obviously like what was going on here.
Yeah.
And then she's like saying, oh, there's selfless love. And then there's also the love, like, the forbidden one. And she's like, which one do you have? And she's like, I don't know. And she's like, And then she just cuts it off.
Yeah.
She does not give in to the desires that are true to her. She cuts it off.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah.
But, it did make me laugh a little bit. Have you ever seen those tropes or those memes about, like, how whenever they do these period piece type movies with a lesbian romance, it's, like, always, like, the same exact 5 scenes, like a longing hand or, like, baking bread together.
Oh, my God. I think there's an SNL skit of that.
Yes. It was giving that.
It's called, like, lesbian period drama or something like that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. You're right. It was very much giving that. Okay, so Jonathan tries to get people to take him to the castle. They say no. That's where the innkeeper says... Oh,
hold on real quick. There's a lady who sells Jonathan flowers with an American, full-on American, like, New York accent, basically.
Yeah, but throwing in Donka in there.
Exactly, yeah, Donka. And she sells him flowers, and I'm thinking, doesn't he, like, realize... Oh, no, it's her. She sells her flowers. And yes. I'm like, doesn't she not buy flowers because they're dead?
Right.
Stupid, dumb choice.
And she says, Donka, quite the unusual choice. Most folks only want the bright ones. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And why is this scene necessary?
Because they realized the actress wasn't giving melancholy.
Yeah. This is where Hernock, a.k.a. Renfield, is like
a.k.a.
starting
Rumpelstiltskin.
A.k.a. Steve Adsit from 30 Rock. Starts like harassing people. It seems like maybe he's bit the cow or whatever at this point. Mm-hmm. It is chocolate. It's chocolate that is all over his hands and arms. And it is apparent that it is chocolate to me. Yes. Because it's that tone. There's that tone of like Hershey's milk chocolate syrup that's on his hands.
Yes.
And
it's fudge.
But then he like wipes a tear down his hand or down his face. And they made that red, like, only.
Very impactful.
And he says the shadow sends his sympathies as well, and then the police chase him off.
Yeah, he's way more antagonistic towards Ellen in this. They have way more interaction.
Yes. Okay, we see the castle on the mountain. Jonathan comes upon the carriage driven by the man who's like all swaddled up, meant to be Nosferatu.
The Mortal Kombat character on the front of the carriage?
Yes.
Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero's cousin.
I'm going to say 2 things. One is he gets into the carriage saying nothing to the driver. He gets out of the carriage saying nothing to the driver. He just like walks up and gets in and then gets out later. I kind of think they used the original footage of the horse carriage in this movie. I don't think it was new horse footage.
I don't think so either, because honestly, it was very like sped up and rapid like in the first one.
Yes.
The way it moved.
Yeah. For some reason, he drops his protective runestone before he goes into the castle, even though things are eerie at this point. Mm-hmm. Orlok emerges from the shadows like he always does and says, "You've kept me waiting and all my servants have retired."
He has a really good line here. Thomas has a good line here. This was written down on a piece of paper for him to say. He said, I have signature papers for you to sign.
Oh, man. Okay. And then we get the dinner scene where, Orlok is staring at him while he's kind of like eating. Jonathan... What?
Can we talk about Orlok and what he looks like?
Yes. He kind of looks like, I mean, I will say one thing. I like his ears better than I liked the ears in the 1979 one. He kind of looks like the original vampires in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like the ones that come back in season 7.
100. Thank you. That's why I wanted to hear it. I was like, this is a Buffy vampire.
Yes.
And the only thing that is like, I don't think it's a bad look. It looks cool. I mean, it's scary, it's creepy, whatever. It's just, in the other ones, if I'm not mistaken, Count Orlok doesn't look that inhuman.
No, this is the most inhuman. Well, I don't know. I mean,
like his whole face is shriveled and has that sort of like horror movie quality to it.
Yeah,
and like the witches in Witches. He really,
yeah, he for sure does not look human.
And there's no reaction to that until like way later. It's just strange to me to have him sitting there
being so inhuman.
He rubs the paper on his face too, by the way.
Oh, does he? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, when he's reading the paper while Jonathan Thomas is eating, he's like rubbing it on his face, basically.
Weird. Thomas is very rude while he's reading, and he says, I was unaware Hernock could correspond in your peculiar dialect. Which I was just like, well, that's one way to talk about somebody else's language.
All right. In their home.
Dick. Okay, then we get something that I do not understand. So he says, Thomas says there's a lot of food. Somebody else should join us. And Orlok says, and soon they shall. And he says, oh, is somebody else coming? And Orlok doesn't respond. And I was like, what was that supposed to be about?
Don't ask me.
Okay. He tells Orlok that he's going to be his neighbor. Mm-hmm. Orlok says, and your wife's. And I feel like when they intentionally make the teeth so inhuman looking, it felt like he was having a hard time talking around the teeth prosthetics to me at times. But they have this weird conversation about Ellen's desires. And
Very weird. Very like, it felt like a conversation that would have been written into a reality show like today between two guys interested in the same woman.
Yeah.
It didn't fit. It was very strange.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Okay. The skeleton clock chimes and he cuts his finger. And I will say, I think this is the best finger cut we've gotten so far.
Yeah. I'm glad he didn't cut it because he doesn't know how to hold a piece of bread and cut it. I would prefer that the skeleton cuckoo clock that keeps going off didn't look like it was bought at Spencer Savings, but hey, Spencer Gifts, if you will.
I mean, the original one looked pretty bad, so it's, I think, a mild step up. So we get the same pretty much shot of he sucks his finger, he says blood is life and shall never be wasted. He backs him into the chair just like the original, and he says we shall talk and come to know each other better.
He says, sit and I'll tell you tales of my long-suffering past and traditions, and you'll tell me yours. Let's talk all night. That's the scariest thing that is the scariest fucking thing I've ever heard. If I showed up to someone's home and they said, sit, I'll tell you of my long-suffering past and traditions. Get me out of here. Suck my blood.
It's like the worst sleepover of all time.
Suck my blood and kill me.
Yeah. So we get the same scene of him waking up in the chair. He has a personal mirror on him that is the size of a fucking wall clock. And
which, by the way, the mirror is the size of a wall clock, but everything hanging on the walls is the size of a compact.
Yes. He sees the puncture wounds on his neck, and we see the scene of him writing the letter to Ellen, just like in the original, talking about the mosquitoes, being just dreadful around here. Then
he walks into the video game Myst for a little while.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. He explores the castle.
Orlok is signing the contract that night, and he sees the photo of Ellen. This time he kind of like volunteers it. And he says, such a delicate neck. And here's one thing I did like. He like scratches down the center of the photo with his nail, and it leaves like a kind of thin scratch on it. And then we see that a couple more times in the movie, and every time it's like taking over more and more of the photo, which I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. It kind of at first looked like just like a black line, but then it kind of like oozed out like blood, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Dot, 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 dot.
Oh, I forgot to mention this before, but it happens throughout, so I'll mention it here. They burn candles in this movie while they sleep all fucking night long.
Yeah.
All fucking night long, these candles are burning. And also, when we had the faux lesbian scene before, there's like a part where the Ruth lights a bunch of candles and then just blows them all out.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice that.
I was like,
That
is this
is so
Charm's
funny.
first episode?
Oh god, I love that.
But anyway, yeah.
Okay.
She's sleeping in the room full of candles. That's what made me think of it.
Yes.
Is she speaking English? Because then she goes to the window and starts muttering.
When midnight comes around and we get the scene of kind of going back and forth between Thomas and Ellen, that one?
Yeah, like, is she muttering a chant or something? Is it supposed to be like the lost language, or is she actually saying something? Because I rewound it twice and I was like, I'm not doing this again.
You know, I watched it with subtitles and it didn't say anything to me, so I think she was just muttering.
Okay, well, there's that. That's what she's doing.
So she sleeps, she has her perfume commercial Mordor realm visit again where she sees Thomas being fed on by Orlok. Mm-hmm. Although we don't, we get the shadow work of his like claws coming close to Thomas again, but we don't ever see him feeding on him like we did in the other ones. No, not at all. Which was kind of a bummer.
And it was weird, like the way it ended in this one it wasn't like she screamed out his name or it was like she was sleepwalking too close to the edge and almost fell off and like woke up screaming. But it seemed like he left because like he just became aware of her in the dream world. And also they did the stupid fucking thing with the wings again.
Oh my god, the smoky bat wings was one of the low points of the film. I had to rewind to watch it again.
Davey was like, "Did you just see that?"
Oh gosh.
It was like a 90s music video.
Yes. So we get the scene where the doctor comes and says it's like, "Oh, this is just some anxiety. She'll be fine by morning." Meanwhile, Ellen says he comes to drink the blood of all. He's going to kill everyone. And the doctor's like, she'll be fine in the morning.
Yeah, she's just had a bad dream.
Yeah. Hutter wakes up in the castle, starts storming around the castle, trying to find the crypt. And I will say, and it was at this point where I was like, wow, they like really, really tried to do a shot-for-shot remake, because even the layout of the room where the coffin was, and he comes down that like small set of stairs, and the coffin is kind of like to his left, it was exactly the same layout. And so and even like the crack in the top of the coffin where he can see Orlok through it, was the same. So I thought that was kind of a fun homage.
Yeah. I do have to say though, when they did the close-up shot on the coffin and you saw Count Orlok through the little broken coffin thing, I laughed. It just looked so corny. Yeah. That scene, like, interspliced with the actual setting, and you could tell it was totally fake setting, and then there was that.
Yeah.
I was like,
okay. So Orlok loads the coffins, or a coffin, onto a horse carriage and rides off. Hutter, Jonathan, ties bed sheets together, jumps out the window, kind of hurts himself.
Kinda. The most overacting fall of all time.
He's a soccer player who just got touched, and that's how he responds.
He's Lisa Vanderpump on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. He finds the rune stone, and then he like is along the river at the same time that Orlok is like sailing down the river with his coffin
on a raft,
and he shouts at him saying, "I'll find you and I'll kill you. I know what you are. I'll find you. I'll kill you." While he's doing like Michael Flatley, Lord of the Dance, shuffling Irish jig. It was,
yes!
I think he was meant to be limping, but it literally looked like he was gonna break into some kind of weird Irish jig.
I started writing a note about it and I just wrote LMAO because I just was cracking up. Orlok on this raft, this cartoony raft from far away. It looks like you're on Microsoft Paint and you have something you cut and you're pasted on it and you're just moving around with the mouse. That's how the raft moved down the river. And then when they would close up and he was like doing that hobbly like dance move that was supposed to be, I guess, injury, screaming at him across on the little raft.
It was so funny.
So corny. It was like little kids playing with action figures.
Yeah. He wakes up in the church hospital. A woman is like molesting his face, just like stroking his entire face as though that is some kind of protective medicine. A Transylvanian doctor comes in who has the worst accent I've ever heard in my life. For some reason, he is wearing leather gloves and sunglasses inside.
Yes. I was like, who is this guy?
I have no idea. We get the scene with the sailors loading the box onto the ship. They see the soil.
We see the captain's most ridiculous facial hair, mutton chops, pressed fake that you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
We hear about Renfield.
Yeah,
we hear, quote, a patient is exhibiting a new revolting behavior. And then we see Renfield eating flies.
Yes. This is where my note said the accents in this movie are all over the place, but it's just, I feel like it starts at a not great place with accents and gets worse over the course of the movie when you see some of the like extras or like random one-liner characters where you're like, why is this New Jersey housewife saying Donka and trying to pretend that she's like Transylvanian? It made no sense.
Yeah, it was like they just told all the extras, go with it.
Yeah.
Go with
we get the same beachside cemetery where Ruth and Wolfram arrive to like give her the letter from Thomas. Mm-hmm. This is I'm again just so fascinated by the visuals of this movie, and like it literally looks like you've pasted them into a screensaver. It is so strange looking.
And so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Then we have Thomas back healing in this, wherever he's healing, and the nurse is like the only one that believes him, but he's a total dick to her. Like she's like, I believe you, and he's like, get away from me, and she runs away. And we see the nurse later get him his like personal effects, which is just the rock. And she hands him the rock saying like, oh, how do you have this? Only a true Romani would have known how to make this. And he says it's from his wife. And she's like, oh, she's from here. And he's like, oh, I guess I never thought about it. Her mom is, or whatever.
Yes.
Oh, enough. That's new, right? That she's from here?
Yes, that is completely new. So let's see. Knock escapes by attacking the janitor again.
The janitor from Modern Times with a Dick Van Dyke British accent from Mary Poppins with a broom that was bought at the Home Depot.
Matt, I could reach through the Zoom telephone and strangle you right now because my next note literally says everyone in this movie has the accent skills of Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins.
And let me tell you something. Dick Van Dyke is a hero of mine. But he even says, I mean, it's the worst.
It's the worst.
This is Chim Chimney Chimchurri, like, to the max, this guy.
100%, yes.
I reckon.
We get the people on the boat dying. The captain says, I don't want to be sailing this death ship alone into Wisborg.
Cat mutton chops.
There is a character on the ship, a sailor who is named Grundelwald, who has an American accent. Yes. Okay, just want to point that out.
Oh god.
He's coughing up blood, so you know he's dying because that's the way everybody dies in movies. Okay.
I will say this ship scene was long and lengthy and it was kind of unnecessary, but at least they spent some time showing like the descent into death on the ship.
Yeah.
But they could have done better.
So the second in command guy takes an axe to Orlok's coffin box, and we do get a scene of Orlok's hand emerging from the soil before he like sits up at a straight 90-degree angle, and I thought the shot of the hand was really cool.
Okay. I thought the shot of the hand was cool too. However, the guy breaks open the coffin. He, axes into the coffin, which should be full of dirt. Okay? Yes. Then we cut to a scene of full dirt on the screen, no edges, and Count Orlok's hand bursting through like it's the ground, not like it's a coffin of dirt.
Yeah.
No way you can even mistake it. And then we cut back to no hand in the air, the coffin scene again, and Count Orlok, instead of having his hand in the air, gets out of it like they do in old cartoons, like where they're like lifted up, and he's
the
like
90-degree thing. Yeah,
no dirt, not a piece of dirt
falling off of him.
Up your mind.
Yeah. Nosferatu comes into town. We get a few scenes of him like carrying his coffin around like we did in the original. For some reason, the boat is on fire.
Thank you. Why?
Don't
How?
know. Thomas gets home. Ellen's like, what's wrong? Thomas says, okay, this was another piece of the movie. Thomas says, I've come to realize something. I truly love you. And I was like, you've been married for a year and you're just now... I would be pissed if my spouse
and you just got back
of a
from
year said
sleeping
that.
with someone.
Right, exactly. But he says he wants to apologize for the distance and lack of affection in the past. Okay.
Uh-huh. Weird.
The town people in the town start to die. We get the scene of the guy drawing crosses on the doors. Ellen reads the book about vampires.
It's different. The context in the book is different in this. It doesn't talk about like being pure of heart or sacrificing yourself as much.
Yeah.
It gives Ellen very little agency in this and very little to do with it, to be honest. Yeah. Whereas in the other one, she's sort of like the whole point.
Yeah.
It seems like it could have been any gal.
Yeah. We get the scene of Knock on the rooftop being, instead of stones thrown at him, they're shooting at him. They think he's the reason for the plague in this town. And Wolfram says, even now my beloved sister has fallen ill. And number one, I just want to say, Wolfram is hot. Number two.
Wolfram is hot.
Very hot. Number two, we get some dialogue between Wolfram and Thomas, but it looks like it's like they filmed them completely separately and then spliced them together because it's like they're not talking to each other. It's weird. Yeah. It's really, really weird.
Back to the high school production acting again.
Wolfram is like, my sister is dead, which I don't know how and when that happened, but anyway. Thomas comes home, sees Ellen reading the book. He gets mad at her for going through his things. And Ellen says he's here draining the lifeblood of an entire city. Thomas can't convince anyone to help him. He tells her to hold the rune stone. Oh, okay. And then it's the final scene. It's nighttime. The Mordor moon emerges and Jonathan is asleep in a chair. Ellen sees Orlok across the street and is holding the runestone and places it in the soil instead. So I think that's meant to be like her giving up her protection.
Yes. And they do this thing with Orlok across the street where every time they show her, they're doing the same effect they've done. But every time they show him, it's completely black or dark around the screen. Everything's like dark except for his white, like bright eyes.
It looks like Coco Montrese's Facetune. Like,
it was so...
I don't understand why his eyes were so bright. It was very alarming.
And why just right now? And why not? What are you doing?
I don't know. But it's funny. I had the exact same note. I said, oh my God, what is going on with his eyes across the street?
And there's no talk of a cock crowing in this one, which was very upsetting to me.
Agreed. So Ellen fakes fainting again, tells him to go get the doctor. We see Orlok coming over for his booty call, and we do get the shot of the shadow climbing up the stairs, but I feel like it was faster than in the first one, so like the suspense, it was less effective to me.
Yes, because the shadow work before, like you mentioned, when we finally got it, was clunky. And then here, it didn't until I had to rewind it. Because I actually thought what they did was take a piece of paper of the shape of Count Orlok and move it. Because I didn't see any movement to the actual silhouette. And there is very little. It looks very rapid and terrible.
Yeah.
That's like the iconic part of the movie.
I know.
That's what you don't focus on? You focus on the scene where he's like being a dictator while he's saying goodbye?
But we do get the part of his shadow wrapping around her heart and squeezing it, and she she comes.
Yeah, she is not. I like this scene, but she's basically like having an orgasm the whole time.
Fully. Thomas tries to get Dr. Bulwer to come with him. Knock pulls a knife on them for some reason and rambles about a demon and says he's feeding on the one last innocent soul in town. Wolfram shoots him, and this is where he says, "Why, Ruth? Why?" Because his sister is dead. And then
Lisa, you're tearing me apart.
Oh my God, you're tearing me apart, Lisa. The sun rises, Orlok dies in a puff of smoke, and Ellen dies in his arms, saying, "I love you, only you." And then, instead of ending the movie, we get Wolfram offering Thomas a job, and Thomas says he has to go very far from this place. and we see him look at the locket, and the gap across Ellen's face has like grown to cover most of it. And Thomas picks up the runestone and says, "Such innocence can only last for so long in the world." And that's the end.
I was like, what is this, a deleted scene?
I know. It was a weird choice to end the movie on that note. Like, just end with the actual dramatic scene of her dying.
Make up your mind.
Yeah.
Like,
at
make
least
up
he
your
didn't,
mind.
At least he didn't turn into a vampire and ride off into the sunset like the 79 version.
I mean, that's true. That's true. I don't know why we had to have like a sitcom-y ending. Agreed.
Yeah.
Why? Why do we have to wrap it up like that? Why do we have to have like after the Charms ones like fight the battle? Why do we have to have the scene of them in the house the next day making salad?
Or having coffee on the footsteps in the front of the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or helping Piper bake a cake.
Yeah.
So that was the movie.
Yes, and I think I've told you most of the like stuff I could find about it. Like, it took 10 years to release, the green screen technology. I guess let's go to the ratings then.
Yeah, because I don't have a lot of trivia for this one, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly,
I was trivia.
I tried to find hard. I tried hard to find trivia, and it's scant. But I looked hard, and everything I think I found I've shared already.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's an independent film, so that makes sense. And with the ratings, so IMDb is a 5.0.
Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes has no ratings yet.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that makes sense to me now that I know that it was more independent.
Yeah.
So it's clean slate, really.
Okay. All right. What are you gonna rate this movie?
Oh my gosh, I don't care. I'm just gonna. I don't think I've gone lower than this. 3.4. No, 3.5.
3.5. Okay.
Yeah, because you know what? I had fun. I had a lot of fun.
Okay. I really I have wrestled with what number to give this movie since I watched it. And I'm still like, I feel like this movie either deserves a 1 or a 10. And
definitely one I could see being a cult classic,
Yeah. Like,
yes. I would watch it again. Unlike
would.
the last one where I was, sleepy time.
Yeah.
The Lunesta butterfly did not fly into my room this night.
I'm going to give this a 9.
You make me want to scream. Can you tell me what you gave The Wizard of Oz again?
Sure. I gave The Wizard of Oz a 6.
Listeners, N gave The Wizard of Oz a 6. And this movie, please watch it. It's free on Tubi. A 9?
You, honestly, and I don't even know whether to call it a beauty or a beast because...
I do.
Okay.
It's a beast. I would watch it again, but this is a beast.
I'm going to call it a beauty. I think it's just, it was...
It had a point of view, but it couldn't make a decision beyond the... It started with a point of view, clearly. It did not remain focused on that point of view.
It's just such a visually strange experience to watch. Fair. But there were some aspects of the visuals that I really liked where I felt like the weird nature of the sets and the way it was edited and all of that almost contributed to the discomfort of the setting. And so that's why I'm calling it a beauty, because I think it's really interesting what they did with the 1922 movie. So I'm giving it a 9 and I'm calling it a beauty.
Listen, I'm with you. Like I support you. I'm with myself, but I support you. And
in my truth.
Let's go on your journey. I agree that there were some times when the visual thing was actually really cool. Like, I didn't want to admit it, but there were certain things that they showed, and I was like, oh, that was successful. But then they would do something like the Count Orlok's castle gate opening up, and it was literally a animated GIF graphic that I could have found on someone's MySpace page of a gate opening, and the image behind it was a encyclopedia image. Still.
Yeah.
So,
but
there was times it was successful and then other times. And the acting was... other than Count Orlok, Count Orlok was fine.
Yeah, he was good, but everyone else
Ruth was fine, even though she felt like she was from a different movie.
Yeah.
Everyone else was so wrong. And I don't know this actor from other things. I'm sure he's a good actor, but the actor who played Thomas in this was so distractingly bad the whole time. I mean, it was like so distractingly bad to watch him. It was unforgivable.
I was just so distracted by how pretty he was that I was willing to forgive some of the bad acting.
I was at first, but then they showed Wolfram, and I was like, see ya.
Okay, here's the other thing that's interesting to note is, you know, from what I have read, it sounds like almost all of the footage of the actors was done in like green screen. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I've heard so many actors talk about how hard it is to act in green screen. And so I can't imagine that contributed to the quality of the acting as well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it excuses it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it could contribute.
I'm sure, but that was the vision of the film. I'm sure.
I know.
From the way you read that article about it, I'm sure these people who had this idea, this duo, the Orlok and the producer, whatever, I'm sure they described it like that to everybody.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. Again.
I think everyone has to go watch this movie, though.
Oh, I agree. I think you should. I agree. I think
really
it's
think you should go watch
especially
this.
If you like the Nosferatu story at all.
Yeah. It's so strange and really interesting.
Yeah.
And hence why I'm obviously calling it a beauty.
Yeah, well, there we are. And the next week we'll be doing the 2024 or 2025. I don't really know.
It came out Christmas Day of 24.
Oh, okay. All right. So right on the cusp of the new year, we'll be doing the most recent Nosferatu.
Yeah, so that'll conclude our Nosferatu series.
Well, we're going to have to figure out what's next.
I know. Well, listeners, if you enjoyed this or have any suggestions for what you want us to cover next, let us know. In the meantime, if you would like to support our little indie podcast, one of the best ways that you could do that is to rate and review our podcast on whatever platform you are using to listen to our episodes.
Yeah, and honestly, if you like our podcast, the best way to get word about is word of mouth. So tell a friend, tell anyone you know, post about us on Reddit.
Yeah. Our social media is RebootyPod on Instagram. You can email us at rebootypod@gmail.com. We love getting emails, so send us one and say hi.
We've also got a Patreon at patreon.com/NandMatt. We have a ton of movie reviews. If you heard me mention Cats in this one, and The Room.
And The Room.
We reviewed both on our Patreon, so check it out. There's a lot of other fun content on there as well.
Yeah, and thanks for listening to Rebooty and the Beast.
See you next week.
Goodbye.